When the janitor offered a fix to their failing $20 million system, the CEO laughed and said, "Stick to your mop." But when he rolled up his sleeve and exposed what was inked on his forearm, her voice cracked, and the entire boardroom turned silent. What came next? Nobody could have predicted. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The second the diagram blinked red on the projector, you could feel it, the corporate panic. Chandler Tech's sleek boardroom, perched on the 48th floor in downtown Seattle, usually buzzed with confidence. But that morning, not even the skyline view could calm the storm. A failed systems test. Millions on the line. A launch just weeks away. It was all unraveling. CEO Meredith Chandler slammed her palm against the polished walnut table. Why is this happening now? Who greenlit that configuration? Her executive team shrank in their seats. No one answered. Because they knew the logistics control matrix had failed. Again. And this time, the consequences were nuclear. Near the corner of the room, unnoticed as always, stood a single dad in a gray janitor's uniform. Tyler Grayson, 39, lean build, eyes that had seen too much, mop in one hand, trash bag in the other. He wasn't supposed to be in the room during meetings. But today, maintenance had overrun. And now, he was frozen in place, watching the system crash flash in front of him like a war zone alarm. His eyes narrowed. They were feeding raw torque values through an unstable relay node. The system wasn't designed for it. In the field, that kind of loop would blow hydraulics in seconds. His voice was quiet but cut through the room like a blade. You're burning out the servo paths. You need to isolate the control node and reroute through a dampened bypass. Silence. Meredith slowly turned. "I'm sorry, who are you?" He cleared his throat, calmly. "Tyler Grayson, janitorial staff." Laughter. Not just from Meredith. From the entire executive table. One VP leaned forward. "Is that the mop guy giving system diagnostics?" Meredith crossed her arms, amused. "And how would you know that, Mr. Grayson?" Tyler hesitated. He wasn't looking for attention. He hadn't even meant to speak. But when he did, it wasn't with arrogance. It was with clarity. "Because I designed similar systems for Tier 1 operators in the Gulf. We routed through magnetic redundancies when primary relays overheated. You're using military-grade tech with outdated corporate specs." A pause. Meredith stepped forward. "Let me get this straight. You're saying you, the guy who mops our floors, knows better than my engineers." Tyler didn't flinch. "I'm saying, if you keep ignoring that loop, the system will fail in real time, and it'll bankrupt this company." One of the junior developers, the only one who didn't look amused, leaned forward, typing rapidly. His fingers froze. "He's right." "What?" Meredith snapped. The young developer turned his laptop around. He just pinpointed the exact loop causing the overload. The room went still. "And Tyler?" He quietly rolled up his left sleeve. Tattooed into his arm, faded but still crisp, was a special projects insignia from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Classified Division. And below it, the coordinates of his former base in Kandahar. The table went pale. Meredith's lips parted, then closed. Because she recognized that mark. Years ago, she'd seen a file, top secret clearance, about a prototype system designed for mobile warfield logistics. And only one name was ever associated with it. Tyler Grayson. The janitor. The father. The man she had just humiliated in front of a room full of suits. She stepped back. "You worked on Project Iron Web." He nodded. "For 7 years. Until I came home to raise my son." Her voice trembled. Why are you here?" Tyler's eyes didn't harden. They stayed calm. Almost too calm. Because not every man who serves gets a soft landing. And sometimes you take whatever job puts food on the table. A long silence. And then he walked out. But that wasn't the end. It was just the start. Tyler Grayson didn't look back. As the heavy boardroom door clicked shut behind him, silence still lingered in its echo. The floor's scent of lemon wax trailed in his wake, but it was the weight of realization that truly hung in the air. Meredith Chandler stood frozen near the projector, her fingers still clenched, knuckles pale. Outside the glass doors, Tyler moved with quiet resolve. He returned to his janitor's cart, pulled out a faded rag, and wiped a streak off the corridor's chrome railing. He didn't rush, didn't revel. That moment back there, that wasn't for applause. That wasn't for revenge. It was truth. And he'd carried it in silence for years. Back in the boardroom, murmurs erupted. Was that real? Project Iron Web? That's Black Ops level stuff. That tattoo. Those numbers. I swear I've read about him in a defense journal once. Meredith said nothing. She didn't have the words. Instead, she quietly gestured to her assistant, Maya, to follow her out. Downstairs, Tyler pushed the elevator button. Ding. Doors opened. He didn't expect her to chase him. Mr. Grayson, Meredith's voice called behind him. Uncertain now. He stepped in, didn't turn. You're not in trouble, she added quickly. I'm not worried. He replied without facing her. His tone wasn't smug. It was just exhausted. Wait. Her heels clacked quickly across the marble until the elevator doors nearly closed on her. She pressed her hand between them and stepped in. Alone with him now, silence returned. You should have told someone who you were, she said. Tyler looked at her. Slowly, calmly. Would it have mattered? Meredith's jaw tightened. She searched his eyes for arrogance, for vengeance, something, but all she found was weariness. The kind you only see in people who've survived too much. I was 27 when I built the distribution logic for Iron Web, Tyler finally said. I had 5 engineers above me. 4 had master's degrees. I had nothing but field experience and scars. Do you know what they called me? She said nothing. Broomstick, because I used to clean the barracks before I made it into tech ops. That name hit her harder than she expected. He looked ahead. I thought leaving the war would mean I'd get to be someone new. I didn't realize the mop would follow me. Meredith shifted. You fixed something today my entire division couldn't. Tyler shrugged. I didn't fix it. I just spoke up before your system burned out. He reached to push the lobby button, but then paused. Your mistake wasn't ignoring the overload, Meredith, he said quietly. It was laughing at the man who saw it coming. The elevator began to descend. Outside, the wind slapped against his jacket as he stepped into the parking lot. His truck was older than half the staff upstairs, and the left mirror was held on with duct tape. He slid in, took a breath, and looked at the picture clipped to the dashboard, a little girl with bouncy curls and paint all over her face. Sophie, 7 years old, his whole world. That night, he picked her up from daycare with a tired smile. She leapt into his arms. You smell like floor soap again, she giggled. Job well done, then, he said, twirling her. She looked up with those big green eyes. Did anyone say thank you today? He paused, then knelt to her level. No, honey, but I didn't do it for that. She studied his face with surprising maturity. Then why did you do it? Tyler tucked a curl behind her ear. Because sometimes, even if no one listens, you still say what's right. She nodded solemnly, then pulled a crumpled card from her pocket. I made you this. It was construction paper, glitter, and glue, barely legible. But it read, to the smartest daddy in the whole universe. Thank you for always fixing broken things. He stared at it for a long moment, and for the first time in years, Tyler Grayson let himself cry. The next morning, Meredith sat in her glass office overlooking the skyline. She hadn't slept much. Something about that man's eyes, how calm he had stayed, how the very people who laughed were now whispering his name like he was a ghost of a legend. She pulled up his employee file. 1-page resume. No college. No prior references. But at the bottom, a note, handwritten, long forgotten. Custodian recommended by Veteran Assistance Program. Widower. 1 child. Cleared for basic clearance due to prior service. Do not reassign without HR consultation. A quiet knock broke her focus. It was Maya, the assistant. There's someone here to see you. Tell them I'm busy. It's about yesterday. It's about Mr. Grayson. Meredith looked up. A man in a black windbreaker and sharp eyes walked in. Government issue. I'm not here for trouble, he said. Just letting you know, we monitor Iron Web names. He was the one who kept the entire Northbridge supply route active during blackout. Kept 4,000 troops from starving. Meredith's lips parted. Why's he here, mopping my floors? The man smirked. Because the world forgot how to value people like him. Then he left. She stared out the window again. And this time, it felt colder. Meredith Chandler's espresso sat untouched, growing colder by the minute. The man's words echoed in her mind like a steady drumbeat. He kept 4,000 troops from starving. The phrase haunted her more than she could admit. She stared at Tyler's employee profile, his military background barely listed, just a line of code buried beneath years of floor wax and forgotten dignity. She thought of the moment he rolled up his sleeve. That tattoo. That silence. Her own disbelief. And the guilt started to whisper. How many times had she walked past him? How many times had she looked right through him? She stood up abruptly. Maya, cancel my meetings. I want to talk to Mr. Grayson. Maya blinked. He clocked out early this morning. Said something about taking his daughter to a school art show. Meredith hesitated, then picked up her keys. I'll find him myself. At the corner of Roosevelt Elementary, color balloons floated above a banner that read, Arts and Dreams Show. Parents milled around in lawn chairs with coffee, children darting around in paint-smeared aprons. And there he was. Tyler stood quietly in the back row, arms crossed, watching his daughter's finger-painted volcano erupt glitter and red paper flames. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, they were soft. She saw him kneel down as Sophie turned and searched the crowd for him. Daddy, you saw it, she cried. I wouldn't miss it for the world, he said, lifting her into a hug. Meredith stood awkwardly by the side, out of place in her tailored blazer. A few parents glanced her way. CEO of Chandler Tech at a public school, show wasn't exactly common. Tyler turned. Their eyes met. She expected annoyance, bitterness. Instead, he gave her a small nod. Didn't expect you here. I didn't expect to be here, she replied, stepping closer. Sophie peered at Meredith. Are you the lady with the shiny shoes who laughs too loud? Tyler smirked. Sophie. But Meredith laughed, genuinely. That's probably accurate. Sophie tilted her head. Are you Daddy's friend? Meredith hesitated. No, but I'd like to be. Tyler stood quietly. He looked away. What do you want, Meredith? I came to say I was wrong, she said. Silence. I'm not just talking about yesterday, she continued. I'm talking about every day I walked past you like you were invisible. Every moment I treated your silence as ignorance. Every second I thought your value ended at a mop. Tyler looked at her, but not with anger. People don't usually apologize when they're that high up. I didn't come here as a CEO, she replied. I came here as someone who realized she judged the wrong man. Sophie tugged on her father's sleeve. Can I go play, Daddy? He nodded. Go ahead, sweetheart. She skipped off into the playground crowd. Tyler exhaled. Why now? Because the company's still falling apart. Because the system you saved? It's just the beginning. We need someone who understands how to build under pressure. Someone who knows how to survive when everything fails. You offer me a job? I'm offering you a chair at the next design review. Not as a janitor. As a systems consultant. He chuckled. Not bitterly. Just tired. I'm not a Sue, Meredith. I'm not asking you to be. She extended a card. One meeting. If you hate it, you walk. But don't let this world define you by your lowest paycheck. He looked at the card, then pocketed it. I'll think about it. Later that night, in a quiet one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, Tyler sat at his desk while Sophie snored softly in her makeshift princess bed. He stared at the business card for a long time. He thought about his late wife, her laugh, how she used to say, You were built for more than silence, Ty. He thought about his team back in Kandahar. He thought about every night he came home aching, wondering if his daughter would grow up, seeing him only as the man who mopped around others' dreams. And he thought about Meredith's eyes when she said she was wrong. He didn't trust easily, but something in him had started to shift. 2 weeks later, the boardroom was quiet again, but not because of failure this time. The monitors were stable. The diagnostics passed. Tyler stood at the head of the table, not in a janitor's uniform, but in a buttoned-up navy shirt, sleeves rolled, eyes calm. Diagrams filled the screens behind him. Everyone listened. Nobody laughed. He pointed to a projection node. Here's the problem. You designed this system for perfect world conditions. But we don't live in a perfect world. You want a control system that adapts? Then stop thinking like engineers and start thinking like survivors. Meredith watched him from the side. One VP whispered, He's good. He's better than good, she said. Tyler didn't speak to impress. He spoke because he knew. He ended the presentation with a single phrase. You want the system to last? Then build it the way a father does, for the ones who can't afford to see it fail. The room applauded. But Tyler, he didn't smile. He just nodded, packed his notes, and walked out. Because applause had never been the goal. But that day, he walked out as a man who'd taken back something more powerful than respect. Purpose. Success breeds envy. And Tyler Grayson, the former janitor turned engineering consultant, was suddenly a walking reminder that titles mean nothing and talent doesn't always wear a tie. By his third week in the new role, whispers had begun echoing through Chandler Tech's pristine halls. He's just a charity hire. A mop guy can't lead real innovation. He'll crash and burn. Just watch. Tyler ignored most of it. He wasn't there to climb social ladders or prove his worth to boardroom gossips. He showed up early, left late, and worked with brutal precision. When others offered 3 solutions, he brought 10. When meetings went in circles, he cut through the noise with clarity earned from battlefields, not boardrooms. But not everyone wanted him there. Especially not Brett Nolan, director of advanced systems. Tall, polished, Ivy League degree, and a jawline that practically screamed privilege. Brett had spent 8 years climbing Chandler Tech's ranks. And now, this quiet ex-janitor had come in and solved problems Brett hadn't even recognized existed. And worst of all, Meredith listened to him. Tyler's opinions were being implemented. His logic was driving updates. His name was even being floated in investor reports. A consulting genius with real-world edge. So Brett smiled to his team behind closed doors and said the quiet part out loud. Let's make the mop boy fail. It started with missing files. Tyler opened his workstation Monday morning and found entire sets of diagrams had vanished. Emails he sent were never received. Internal file links were broken. The tech team blamed syncing issues. The engineers whispered something else. Then came the false error logs. Printouts Tyler had reviewed and corrected were showing red flags. Altered reports designed to make it look like he'd approved flaws. Flaws that, if launched, would have cost the company millions. Meredith called him into her office. Her tone wasn't accusatory, but it wasn't warm, either. I need to know you're triple-checking everything, she said, calmly. We're getting some conflicting diagnostics. Tyler stared at her. I know what I signed off on, and I didn't miss those errors. She paused. Then someone's playing games. Someone doesn't like that I'm not cleaning floors anymore. Meredith sighed. I'll investigate it quietly. Just keep your guard up. He nodded once. Always do. That night, Tyler left the building after hours. The parking garage echoed with distant footsteps, faint tire screeches, and a flickering light that had needed repair for weeks. As he approached his truck, he noticed something. The hood was slightly open. He pulled it fully, inspecting quickly. His breath caught. The brake line had been slashed. He didn't panic. He didn't yell. He pulled out his phone and took photos. Called it into HR and the building's private security. But he knew. This wasn't corporate sabotage. This was personal. The next morning, he walked into the boardroom early, before the execs. He opened a folder, laid out 3 photos. The brake line, the workstation log edits, and the falsified diagnostic headers. Then, on the last slide, a security screenshot. A grainy, time-stamped image. Brett Nolan. After hours. Sitting at Tyler's desk. When Meredith arrived, she stopped mid-step. You have proof. Tyler didn't speak. Just slid the photos toward her. She stared. And without another word, picked up the phone. Get legal. Now. By noon, Brett was gone. Walked out in front of everyone, escorted by HR. He didn't look back. Didn't speak. Just glared at Tyler as he passed, muttering, enjoy it while it lasts, broom boy. But it wasn't victory Tyler felt. It was sorrow. Because even in success, the world was too quick to choose sides, and too afraid of someone who didn't fit the mold. Later that week, Meredith stood outside the building's back entrance as Tyler helped his daughter out of the truck for school drop-off. Sophie wore a pink backpack with unicorn pins, her curls bouncing as she hopped down. Meredith stepped forward. Sophie, right? Sophie looked up. You're the boss lady. I guess I am. Tyler raised a brow. Something wrong. She shook her head. No, I just wanted to apologize. Again. You already did. This time for something else. He paused. She continued. For not protecting you better. I brought you in and didn't think about how badly some people might react. You were targeted because I made you visible. Tyler looked away, then down at his daughter. You don't need to apologize for giving me a shot, he said, only for not expecting the fight that came with it. Meredith nodded. That's fair. They stood in silence for a beat. Then she added softly, the board wants to promote you. Full-time leadership. VP of Systems Innovation. Tyler laughed under his breath. Guess I need a new shirt. She grinned. I think you've earned it. Sophie tugged on his hand. Can I draw you a new volcano for your new desk? He knelt down, ruffling her hair. Only if it erupts glitter again. She squealed. Always. As she ran off, Meredith watched the man who used to mop her floors now rise. Without arrogance, without bitterness. Just strength. Just grace. Just truth. It started with a photo. Someone on Meredith's PR team snapped a shot of Tyler Grayson standing at the head of the Chandler Tech design floor, pointing at a digital schematic on a giant screen. His sleeves were rolled up, exposing that weathered military tattoo. His daughter, Sophie, sat on a stool in the corner, legs swinging, crayons in hand, drawing quietly as if she belonged in the room. The caption was simple. From janitor to VP. The mind behind Chandler Tech's engineering turnaround. Within 24 hours, it had gone viral. Veterans groups across the country shared it. So did engineers, working-class parents, single dads, even celebrities. Tyler Grayson became a trending name on every platform. An emblem of second chances, of unseen genius, of humility rising from the floorboards. People weren't just inspired. They were furious that someone like him had been ignored for so long. And just as many were curious, including those who remembered what Tyler had left behind. One Tuesday morning, a black sedan pulled into Chandler Tech's private parking garage. Out stepped a woman in a long military coat and combat boots that clicked with purpose. She made it past security with one name, Colonel Dana Voss. Meredith was already in her office when the call came. She's here to see Mr. Grayson, Maya whispered. Let her in, Meredith said immediately. Moments later, Tyler stood across from the woman he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Colonel Voss, he said flatly. Still rolling up your sleeves at the worst possible moment. Grayson? She smirked, but her tone carried weight. I figure if anyone could find me, it'd be you. She handed him a file. Top secret clearance. Dusted with time, but still sealed. Tyler didn't touch it. What is it? A chance to finish what you started, she said. The Pentagon saw your interview. They didn't care about the mop. They care that the prototype you built 8 years ago. It's now being reevaluated for emergency urban response. They want you on the consultation team. He looked away. I don't do war anymore. This isn't war, she said. It's cities. Earthquakes. Hurricanes. They want iron web adapted to save lives. Not in them. He stared at the file. They didn't care about me when I came back. Didn't help me feed my daughter. I know, she whispered. That's why I didn't come with orders. I came with a choice. He looked at her. Why now? She paused, then said something he never expected. Because when I buried my husband last year, I remembered you carrying 3 wounded men on your back through a minefield. And I realized no one ever carried you. Tyler didn't speak for a long moment. Then, I have a daughter now. She comes first. Then bring her with you. You don't have to serve their way. Just teach them how not to fail. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. That night, Tyler sat at the kitchen table while Sophie slept. He opened the file. Diagrams, coordinates, system specs, his old designs brought back from the dead. But this time, instead of battlefield schematics, the pages were filled with civilian use concepts. Autonomous triage drones, flood bridge deployables, earthquake-ready comms. His tech, used for good. He thought about all the nights he went to bed wondering if he'd ever get to matter again. If cleaning boardrooms was all that was left. If Sophie would ever know what he used to be. And he realized something. He had a choice now, because someone finally gave it to him. The next day, Tyler returned to work early. But when he stepped off the elevator, the entire lobby was full. Reporters. Cameras. A full-blown press conference waiting to erupt. He turned to Meredith. What the hell is this? I tried to hold them back. They wouldn't take no for an answer. One reporter shouted, Mr. Grayson, is it true you were once homeless after discharge? Another, how does it feel to go from mopping floors to fixing billion-dollar systems? And then, a little voice. Why do they care now, Daddy? Sophie stood beside him, rubbing her eyes, hair tangled from the morning rush. Tyler picked her up. He looked at the cameras and said one sentence that silenced the room. They didn't care when I was invisible. The microphones froze. But now that I'm in a suit, he added, they want to write about potential. Let me tell you something. They walk past that potential every day while I clean their trash. His voice cracked just a little. The only person who ever asked me how I was doing was the receptionist. She brought me coffee once because she said I looked tired. That's kindness. Not these lights. Not these headlines. He looked at Sophie. Success is not a suit. It's surviving. It's showing up every day, even when the world doesn't care that you exist. He turned and walked inside. The cameras didn't follow. They couldn't. Because for once, they had nothing to say. The sun hung low over the grassy hills of Hillview Memorial Cemetery as Tyler Grayson stood in silence before the small white headstone. He hadn't visited in almost a year. Emily Grayson, 1985 to 2016. Beloved wife, fierce mother, unfinished dream. A soft wind rustled the leaves overhead, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. Tyler knelt, pressing his palm against the stone. His fingers trembled. Sophie's getting big, he said quietly. She did a glitter volcano for Science Week. You would have loved it. His voice cracked. And I'm not cleaning floors anymore. He exhaled hard, lowering his gaze. I tried to stay small. I thought maybe if I kept my head down, the pain would stay down too. But someone saw me. Not because I wanted them to. Because I couldn't stay silent anymore. He opened his wallet and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a rough sketch Sophie had made just days ago. It was a stick figure with a big smile, standing at a podium, with hearts and gears drawn all around. A child's version of her dad at Chandler Tech. She thinks I'm a hero, he whispered. But the truth is, I still don't know if I'm ready for any of this. His hand clenched over the stone. They want me to help rebuild Iron Web. Not for war. For disaster relief. They want to use what I built to save people now. Real people. His shoulders sank. But it means leaving. Training. Traveling. Leaving Sophie with someone else while I go teach suits how to build machines that actually listen. A tear slid down his cheek. I don't know how to do this without you. Silence. Then, tiny footsteps behind him. Daddy. He turned. Sophie stood there, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers she'd picked from the field nearby. I told her I'd come with you, Meredith said from behind her, stepping forward. She insisted. Sophie handed him the flowers. She said Mommy likes purple. Tyler took them gently. Thank you, sweetheart. Sophie looked at the stone. Is Mommy proud of you now? Tyler knelt beside her. I hope so. No, she said, smiling. She is. I can feel it. And in that moment, Tyler knew she was right. Later that evening, Meredith sat across from Tyler at his kitchen table, where a slow-cooked stew simmered in the background, and Sophie quietly drew rockets in the living room. They offered me a seat at the Defense Innovation Council, Meredith said, casually sipping her tea. Said they were impressed by the leadership decisions I've made this year. Tyler smirked. So hiring the janitor saved your reputation? Meredith smiled without denying it. It did more than that. It reminded me what leadership is supposed to be. She leaned in. But if you're leaving to consult for the Pentagon, I want something in writing. Tyler raised a brow. You're negotiating now. I'm offering you a legacy, she said. When you return, your seat's still here. And I want your name on every system we develop that has your DNA in it. He folded his arms. Why? Because my daughter saw your speech online, she said. She asked me why I never noticed the man behind the mop. And I had no answer. Tyler sat back. You could have ignored me that day. I know. And you laughed. I know. But you changed. Her eyes welled just slightly. I'm still changing. They sat in silence for a while. Then Sophie peeked in from the living room. Can I be an engineer like Daddy? Meredith turned to her with a smile. You could be anything you want, Sophie. Tyler smiled too. But there was something deeper behind it now. Resolve. Direction. This was no longer about proving anything. It was about building something that would outlive him. 3 months later, at the headquarters of the National Emergency Response Council, Tyler stood in front of a crowd of defense analysts, engineers, and logistics coordinators. He wore no medals, no fanfare, just a button-up shirt, sleeves rolled, and a blueprint in his hands. Behind him on the projector was a schematic for a system titled Iron Web Reborn, Civilian Deployment Model. This design isn't perfect, he began, his voice steady, but it's adaptable, built for failure, not fantasy. And if you do it right, it won't need a hero. It'll just work. A murmur of agreement moved through the room. I built the original in a shipping container surrounded by mortar fire. This version, it was built at my kitchen table, while my daughter colored in the margins. I got a few smiles. Let's stop designing for boardrooms. Let's build for the people who don't have backup when the system fails. When he stepped down from the podium, the applause was quiet, but real. Back home, Meredith watched the live feed from her office. She smiled as Sophie leaned into the camera beside the projector at school, whispering, "That's my daddy." Meredith wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, "Yeah, that's all of our daddy now." The autumn wind blew hard outside Chandler Tech headquarters as Tyler stepped into the building one last time. This time, not with a mop or even a schematic in hand, but with something far heavier, his decision. It had been 4 months since the relaunch of Iron Web in Washington. Civilian deployment prototypes were already saving lives. Drones delivering insulin during a flood in Louisiana, pop-up triage modules in earthquake-hit rural Nevada. News outlets called him the janitor who saved a nation. But Tyler hated that name, because he was never just a janitor, and no janitor was ever just anything. He walked past the front desk. The new receptionist stood and smiled warmly. "Mr. Grayson, welcome back." He nodded. "Just here for one meeting." The elevator ride up was silent, but his mind wasn't. He thought of Sophie, now 8, sitting at their kitchen table last night, reading aloud the article from the Washington Post about him. She didn't even flinch at the words, Pentagon consultant, or former janitor. All she said was, "You're still my daddy." He thought of Emily, her laughter, her strength, how she'd once told him, "Your hands might clean buildings, but your mind builds them." He thought of Meredith, who had grown, changed, been humbled. And then he stepped into the boardroom. They were all there. The execs. Some old, some new. Meredith at the head. The air felt different now. Not arrogant. Not dismissive. But quietly waiting. Tyler walked to the front, placed a sealed envelope on the table, and looked them all in the eye. "I'm turning down the vice president offer." A silence rippled through the room. Meredith blinked. "Tyler, why?" He breathed out slowly. "Because I don't want a title. I want a school." Confused murmurs followed. He continued. "There are hundreds, thousands, of veterans, single parents, brilliant minds cleaning floors, fixing cars, building scrap radios in basements. And no one sees them." He pointed to the corner of the room. "That's where I stood when I told you your system would fail. You all laughed. But I wasn't angry at that. I was angry that if I had stayed silent, you never would have known I existed." They all looked down. "I'm using the compensation you gave me to start a nonprofit. A training institute. The Emily Grayson Institute for Applied Engineering. For people with no degrees. No status. Just raw skill. We'll train them. Certify them. Give them a name that means something again." A quiet, sharp breath came from one of the younger executives. Meredith stood up slowly. "You'll still consult for us, though, right?" Tyler smiled. "On one condition." She tilted her head. "You send your interns to clean floors for a week before they ever touch a design panel. Let them learn what it means to be invisible. Then teach them how to see." Meredith let out a soft laugh through the tears that had gathered in her eyes. "Deal." 6 months later, a small brick building stood on the edge of Tacoma. Inside, 20 desks filled a modest space. Whiteboards covered in handwritten equations, torn down machines scattered in corners like half-solved puzzles. A banner hung over the door. Emily Grayson Institute, building brilliance from the ground up. On one wall was a photo. Tyler, in janitor uniform, sleeve rolled, standing next to his daughter, holding a mop in one hand and a drawing of a rocket in the other. Beneath it, the quote, "The world didn't change. I just stopped asking for permission." Tyler Grayson. In the first cohort, there were ex-cons, single moms, former fast food workers, a man who dropped out of high school but could rebuild an engine blindfolded, a woman who grew up homeless and taught herself to code on library computers. They called him Mr. G, but he always told them, "Call me Tyler." Mr. G was the guy mopping floors. That guy knew more than I ever will. And every Friday, he made the students mop the hallway, not to humiliate, but to remind that humility is the foundation of greatness. Back at Chandler Tech, Meredith sat in her office and stared out over the skyline. A knock came at the door. Maya stepped in with a stack of resumes. "Interns are starting next week. We got 2 from Stanford and 3 from Emily Grayson Institute." Meredith smiled. "Let the mop training begin." 1 year later, Sophie stood in front of her school's Dreams of the Future project board, surrounded by colorful posters. Her display showed her dad in a hard hat, blueprints in one hand, glitter volcano in the other. The caption? My daddy fixes the world one idea at a time. When the principal asked what she wanted to be when she grew up, Sophie answered without hesitation, a janitor, and then whatever I want.